Good evening and welcome to Chasing the Facts. I'm your host, Sam Chase, and with us this evening we have two guests, actually. We have Donna Newcomb, who is currently the chairperson of the school committee, and we have Dr. Jay Lang, superintendent of schools. So welcome to both of you.
Thank you.
Glad to have you here. And why don't we start with Donna? And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you are in your second year of your second term.
First year.
First year. I told Jay I'd get it wrong, and I did, so that's fine. I'll get it right at some point. So,
I'm right.
But anyway, you've recently been elected chair. So, what is the balance of the composition on your committee in terms of personnel and positions? So, you're the chair. Vice chair is
Jeff Doherty.
Jeff Doherty.
Yep. Secretary is Dennis King.
And then
Contributing members would be Maria Santos and John Moses.
Okay. So, actually, the committee did not change as a result of the recent election.
No.
So we have the same folks.
We have the same
that's
people.
good. And every year you typically reorganize.
Yes.
And shift positions like that. So.
Yes.
Very good. And Jay, you've been with the system for how long now?
This will be the end of my 7th, so finishing my 7th year.
Can't believe it. And when you came to us, you came during a period of some relative stress, I would say. We were having some financial problems in the district, and I have to say that within your 7 years, certainly that situation has straightened itself out. We don't seem to have those issues anymore. So, of course, we're very glad that you're here and serving as superintendent. One of the things that I notice when I do watch the school committee meetings, and I do watch them sometimes, is I'd say over the last 3 or 4 years anyway, it's very noticeable. You have a very good spirit of cooperation and collaboration, and everybody's a contributing member.
Yes,
A
absolutely.
lot of times you have a 5-person committee and you might have 1 or 2 people that actually do the work and the others are kind of along for the ride, but it just seems that everybody contributes and has valuable input. And also, I would say, Jay, of your staff as well. I mean, you're there at all the meetings, and you usually have a staff person or 2 there. And it just seems to be a very collaborative situation. I think Chelmsford is well served by that approach.
I couldn't agree with you more. I think I really couldn't be prouder of the committee and the work that we've done over the last couple of years. And what a great group of people to work with, including with the administrative team. I think that, certainly any group has differences of opinion or may have thoughts about the way things should go, but, we're able to work together collaboratively. We don't always agree, but there's a feeling of genuine and mutual respect and caring for each other. Whatever we disagree on, we set it aside, we stay focused on what the business and the job of the school committee is, and we move forward.
And that comes through as a viewer, even if you didn't, and I know all the people, but even if you didn't know all the people, I think you get that when you watch the meetings, that comes through loud and clear. So one of the things that you had indicated that you would like to talk about this evening is your statement of interest. So I'd love to have you explain what that is and maybe flesh that out a little bit for the audience and why it's important for the school and the community at large.
Sure. So I'm going to have Dr. Lang kind of help me out here a little bit because he is the statement of interest expert. But what this basically is, statement of interest is we are asking the Massachusetts School Building Association Authority to we are putting them on notice that we would like to be able to build a new school. Okay, so we have over the last, it's got to be 5 or 6 years now, I think, submitted a statement of interest, and what we were hoping for was to be invited into the process to explore the possibilities of building a new high school. Unfortunately, that did not come to fruition.
Now, let me stop you for 1 second. For the benefit of the audience, some people may not know what the SBAB is. Okay, maybe you can explain. My understanding is that they provide a level of funding should your project be accepted.
Well, yes, after quite a lengthy process.
Okay.
And actually, Before we go too much further, this might be a good opportunity for Dr. Lang to explain exactly what that process is. Because
Okay,
we
good.
just completed really the first step, and I think we sent that application in on the 29th of April.
Yep,
Right.
it was the end of April.
You're right. And so now we wait. And we won't hear anything till the fall.
And the focus
Right.
is the high school.
Not anymore. And
Okay.
that's, so we had been really focusing on the high school. And then this past year, we worked with Dorn and Whittier architects who have done our facilities assessment in the past, and really took a look at, okay, based on, what our luck has been in the past in terms of having an application approved and what the needs of the district are, and also the condition of our buildings, what would be the best path for us to pursue at this particular point. And so we actually changed directions, and we submitted a statement of interest for a new middle school. And in particular, it would be replacing Parker Middle School. And so at this point, maybe you can jump in and.
Dorn Whittier, as Donna alluded to, was the architectural firm that came on board in 2016 to help us do a district-wide facility assessment and help us put together a short-term and a long-term capital plan. At that time, the long-term capital plan we thought would be a potential new high school project. And we applied, as Donna said, for 4 or 5 years, and we didn't receive funding approval. It's a competitive application process every year. The statement of interest is really an application. And you go up and compete against other school systems who have put in an application that particular year. And what we found was our high school just wasn't in as...
Not decrepit enough.
Well, yeah, it was too well maintained.
Right,
It was
exactly.
too new in the scheme of the other high schools we were competing against. So we just were not making a competitive application. We had Dorn Whittier come back this past fall of '21 and work with us to reassess our capital plans, to see where we're at, to see if we should maybe shift focus. And at that point in time, because we would like to do a new school building project in the town in the years to come, we shifted to the middle school. We can make a more compelling case, really for either Parker or McCarthy, but when we looked at the two schools, because you do have to use a school in your application, Parker actually could make a more compelling argument because of the, again, age of the facility, some of the systems in the facility, building code current compared to when it was built, how it's laid out, student population can serve, things along those lines. So we, at the end of April, submitted an application for a middle school project. And now we'll go through a process, kind of waiting for the MSBA to come out over the course of the summer to review the facility. And then probably right after the first of the year, we would hear if we actually get invited into the funding pipeline. And it's, as Donna alluded to, it's a longer process to go through a couple of years even, just to get your application reviewed and to get into the pipeline. But we'd like to get our foot in the door with the MSBA, let them know that we'd like to do a new school building project. And the MSBA we talked about is the Massachusetts School Building Authority. And if they partner with you to build a school, depending on your community's ability to pay or its kind of wealth status, you receive a reimbursement on your building. So in Chelmsford ballpark, we would receive about a 50% reimbursement if we were to do a new school building project. So it's really economically wise and feasible to try to work with the MSBA on a school building project. Right. So that's what we're embarking on right now.
So assuming, based on what you just said, assuming that you would hear at the beginning of next year that you're in the pipeline, how much longer could we reasonably expect before we actually heard, yeah, it's a go for your project?
I don't know, it's another year or two,
But a
right?
year and a half to 2 years.
Yeah.
Okay, so it is important, and I remember you making the same pitch to town meeting several times over the past few years, and because the question was, well, if we don't actually really need something right now, why are you doing it? And that was the explanation. It takes a long time, and we'd rather put a thing in every year and at least get on the radar. That makes perfect sense.
Absolutely, and there are some, obviously, in addition to what Dr. Lang said, there are some driving forces behind, our desire to pursue this. One is our newest building is Chelmsford High School, and that opened in 1978. Okay, and so, when you think about that, all right, the age of our buildings, just in general, in terms of, what their lifespan might be.
That's the newest building, folks. newest.
So
Yeah.
we know, okay, that, at some point, all right, we're going to have to begin the process of replacing some of these buildings. But in addition to that, one of the things that we've been kind of keeping an eye on is enrollment, especially at the elementary school levels, and it's growing. And so we know that, one of the things that people had said was, well, why don't you do an elementary school then? And that's a great question. But we really wanted to be able to try and take a look at what would be the school that would benefit the entire town, right? If you build a new elementary school, you might help one part of the town. But if you build a middle school, then every kid coming from the elementary schools may have the opportunity to pass through that brand new facility. And that's what we were hoping for as well. And then if we have, depending on the type of project that we get granted, this may give us some flexibility with one of our 2 middle schools in terms of converting that into an elementary school. So we have lots of ideas about how this may shake out, but the first step in all of this is getting invited into the process.
Right, and then getting secure in the knowledge that you're going to be able to do another building, okay? And
Absolutely.
that gives you the flexibility. So with that, assuming that you were able to do that, the current configuration, if I remember correctly, for middle school is grades 5 through 8. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, so could that change as a result of all this? You mentioned that you might have some shift in the population.
Sure. This actually,
Yeah.
and this could change actually before a new building. As we take a look at how we're delivering services, how can we be most effective in being able to do that? How efficient are we in terms of our scheduling and our staffing and things like that? So that's already on the table for discussion. And as a matter of fact, I believe it's next Monday.
Correct.
You can go ahead and mention that. I don't know all the details.
No, so there are 2 things. Longer term, I think we would be potentially looking at a new middle school building project with a different grade level reconfiguration. Because one of the things we have to do is we know we have a need for space at the elementary level. So we have to think about trying to open up space in those 4 schools. And one way of doing that would potentially be to have the 4th grade move up to another building. So we could potentially build a new grade 4, 5, 6 building to benefit the whole town, and then reutilize, say, McCarthy as a 7, 8 for the whole town. Everyone would get to go through that new building. We'd free up 4 or 5 classrooms in each of the elementary schools to help us with our enrollment needs at that level. And again, everyone in the town benefits from it. There are so many different options. You could do a 4, 5, 6. You could do a 6, 7, 8. You could reconfigure. And that really won't even start the discussion until we get invited into the pipeline,
Right.
which then kind of is why you have that 1.5 to 2 years to hold community input sessions and whatnot, get some perspective. But one of the things that Dora Whittier did point out is a new school building project, start to finish, you're probably looking at least 6 years. So in the short term, in those 6 years, could you potentially better utilize your existing facilities? So when we do look at our 2 schools, McCarthy and Parker, they both run 5 to 8. They're both 8-strand middle schools, which means we have 8 core classrooms at each grade level. So they have an identical staffing model. But would it be more efficient for us to potentially look at repurposing the 2 middle schools we have now and have one be a 5, 6 and the other be a 7, 8, have everyone in the town have a little bit more equitable service delivery? We're running really 2 schedules in the schools because our 5th and 6th grade still employs an elementary school model with co-teaching with 2 teachers.
Yes.
And then when you reach 7th and 8th grade, it's more of a high school model where you have an individual teacher per specialty or subject area. So we're duplicating effort and services in both schools. We are going to have some discussions beginning. We've already started to talk to staff a little bit. And as Donna alluded to, next Monday, we're going to have kind of an open visioning input session for parents to talk about that possibility in the short term, because we wouldn't have to wait 6 years. We could just possibly reutilize our 2 schools that we have now and be a little bit more equitable, take a look at our programming to make sure it's as efficient as it can be, because we do have some issues with our 2 schools now, particularly around scheduling, because you are running 2 schedules in the same building. So that conversation is going to begin next week.
Okay, and if you were to make changes like that, does that in any way impact the labor contracts that you have with the teachers?
No, we've already had discussions because the teachers have been part of the discussion process to
good,
date.
good.
We'd obviously have to talk with the union around who moves where.
Right.
In either scenario, it's not a cost savings, it's not any kind of a budget reduction scenario. So we would want the teachers to kind of go with the students from one building to another to keep it as cohesive as possible. So no, the union would work with them as partners to make sure
Okay,
that
good.
people were accommodated. And we have to get into finding out, it actually might cost us some additional positions to do this. It might be net equal. It's not being considered as any kind of a budget reduction or workforce reduction type plan. It's just a more cohesive potential program, streamlining services, and also our supports for the staff. Because if we had, say, all of our 5th and 6th grade teachers in the same building, and they're on the same schedule, professional development and planning and prep, time could all be better coordinated, as opposed to having them in 2 different schools
Right.
on 2 different schedules.
It makes perfect sense, and as a Chelmsford resident and a taxpayer and somebody who has grandchildren in the school system, it gives me a very high degree of comfort to know that you're thinking along these lines and you're having these discussions. And
Yes.
I don't think the average person, and this is not I'm not slamming anybody in the community, it's just, you're not involved, so you don't know, basically.
Right.
It's just an awful lot more to delivering the educational product than, the 3 R's and so on and so forth. I mean,
Absolutely.
The logistics of trying to administer
Right.
a system as large as ours is just overwhelming.
Right, and all of the things that we're talking about are like not standalone issues. So we have the strategic plan, for example.
Right.
All right, and so that is going to be presented to us. I think we're going to get an overview in June.
June 7th.
Right, and then and then we're going to be taking a look at what the final draft of that is going to be. And that's also going to help us, make decisions going forward about the district. But based on the conversations that we've had with them so far, they're pointing out to some of the things that maybe we could just right now start doing that would help with the efficiency and the delivery of services to students. So these are the kinds of things that it's really a multi-layered kind of thing. And I know you know this from having served on the Finance Committee and the Board of Selectmen and things like that, but
I've been recalled to active duty. I'm on the Finance Committee once again. I don't know how I myself get talked into that, but
right. But there's a lot of layers to these
Right.
things, and a lot of thought and discussion that has to go
Right.
into having any of these ideas come to fruition. So.
Well, as somebody, and you just alluded to it, as somebody who has served on several different committees in the town, and one obviously was the Select Board, I've said it before and I'll say it again, and I'll say it many more times before I die. I think the school committee is probably the most difficult to serve on with regard to the time that you have to put in. If you want to do the job the way it's supposed to be done, it's just a tremendous amount of time and the commitment. And you are expected to be visible, and that takes time.
Yes.
And commitment. So I say it's probably the hardest committee assignment within the town government structure. That's just my opinion. Other people, I'm sure, have different opinions. But so anybody who does that and undertakes the responsibility that you and your committee members have undertaken, and multiple times. I mean, you're in your second term. Dennis is in his
Second.
Yes.
and I think you don't have any newbies on the
No.
committee this time around. So people have re-upped. So
Yep.
so great. So is there anything else you want to say about the statement of intent?
No, I just think it's important that that people hear us talking about
Yes,
this.
very
now.
important.
Because one of these days, hopefully,
Right.
we're going to have that application approved, and we want people to understand what the rationale was behind this, because we've seen projects fail in the past, right? And so.
Yes.
Right, and so I want to make sure that we're doing everything we can do to be as open and transparent, and doing a good job communicating what our plans are and what, as I said, the rationale behind it, so that we can begin to maybe build that support, around a project like this, because it's going to need the entire town's support.
Absolutely. And relative to communication, I happen to think you folks have a great website.
thank you.
I've looked at some of the other towns, this school department, and I like the way it's linked into the town website. It's, easily transferable, but I find your website is very informative, and your communications are very good.
That was actually a focus of the school committee over the last number
Was
of
it?
years.
Yes.
Yes, our older website was a little bit outdated.
Yes.
And it wasn't as, I guess things weren't in as logical a location.
User-friendly.
as you-
Right. It was not
User-friendly is a
user-friendly.
good word.
No.
So we actually started from scratch and rebuilt a whole new platform. And we have a gentleman on staff that actually helps us manage the social media and website, and just to try to keep it a little bit more current.
It's very easily navigated, I find, especially for older people like me, but it's, I just find it very clear and well laid out and extremely informative. So you've got that in place to help you with your communication.
Absolutely, and that was really one of the goals for getting that in place. Is that we wanted to make sure that people were informed, of all of the things that are happening in the schools. And as you said, as you navigate it, it's really quite remarkable. When you see some of the things that the kids are involved in, or some of the activities that are happening in the schools, it's just really amazing. What our staff and our administration and parents, do on a day-to-day basis.
It is incredible.
So.
And one thing that I've noticed, I've been in town now for 43 years. I can't believe it. I'm still a blow-in, however. Is the degree of involvement that you get from the community at large, especially parents and caregivers. Maybe you want to talk a little bit about that. PTOs, how the parent community has input into the educational services and so forth.
Sure. So we actually we have school site councils, and we also have our PTOs. So I'll talk a little bit about the PTOs, and Dr. Lang can talk a little bit.
And
about
people can volunteer for these things, folks.
Oh, absolutely, and we're actually looking for volunteers.
There you go.
Okay. And there's lots of different things that people can volunteer for. So you can certainly be on one of the executive boards of the PTOs, but sometimes they're just looking for assistance for one particular event. So there's many, many different ways that people can contribute. One of the positive outcomes of COVID was that we were able to both do Zoom meetings, PTO meetings, which actually allowed more parents to be able to participate.
Right.
Because they didn't necessarily have to find childcare, or it gave them a little bit more flexibility. And so some PTOs have done hybrids. Some continue to remain in the Zoom, meeting format, and others have gone back in person. But it really added a nice dimension for parents to become involved.
I think that's probably the new model going forward. I mean,
It very well might be, yeah.
Irrespective of pandemics and what have you. It's like anything else. Once you get used to the format, people get comfortable with it, and when you have the Zoom, it does allow for more participation, and actually participation. People are able to feel more comfortable giving input in that form, as opposed to maybe standing up in an in-person meeting. So
Exactly.
That's another, I think, as you said, positive aspect of the
Absolutely. And
outcome
our
of the
PTOs were just phenomenal. I mean, I really can't say enough good things about them. All parent-led. We have teachers that will attend, to give a teacher update, and certainly the principals and assistant principals will attend as well to also give updates, and a school committee member to provide updates. But they do many different things. Okay, some of the things that they do. One of the things that they do is certainly fundraise.
Yes.
But with these funds, they provide enrichment opportunities for the kids in schools that they may not otherwise have. So it could be, a field trip, or someone coming in, like we have in the elementary schools. One of my favorite ones is when they have the tidal pool people come in, and they set up a tidal pool, and the kids can go in and touch, the different things, and learn about tidal pools and the ocean, and the various organisms that may be living in the ocean, and it's just such an awesome opportunity. And we have all of these kinds of programming happening throughout the district as a result of the hard work of the PTOs. In addition to that, they're a great support to our staff. I mean, I just, a couple weeks ago, South Row had their PTO appreciation luncheon. And, you walked into the gym, it was completely transformed into, a restaurant-type situation where parents had made food, and, the teachers could come down and enjoy a nice lunch and receive some gifts just to say thank you for all of your hard work over the course of the year. And so these parents really go all out in terms of trying to provide for extra opportunities for kids and support for the staff. And it's really, I don't think we could be really any more fortunate than we are to have the PTOs that we do.
And my recollection, and of course, you know that my wife taught in the
Yes.
system for 39 years,
Yes.
so I had some.
My son had her.
Yes, he did. I
Yes.
remember the connection. So I have a little bit of knowledge about that. It's always been that way.
Yes.
Ever since I can
Yes.
remember, where the degree of involvement from the parents and the community at large has just been, it's been overwhelming compared to, say, other towns. Perhaps.
Absolutely.
And the fundraising and all the efforts that go into the, all the support things that they do. And
it really contributes to the culture of the school.
it does, and I think it's reflected in your staff. I am just continually blown away at the quality of the teaching staff in this town.
Right.
You know, we're not a Concord or a Lexington or a Dover, but we have that level of staff, that the wealthier towns seem to be able to attract. We are able to attract those people, and I have to say, it has to be in large part because of the offering that you put forth and the culture that you've helped to create.
I think,
You
yes,
know, I
culture
mean,
is a huge part.
Let's be honest about it. You know, a lot of these folks, and I've heard you say this at a school committee meeting, they could go somewhere else and make another $15,000 or $20,000 a year, but they elect to stay here.
Yeah,
Okay?
we do have an incredible staff.
Yes, it's
And I
amazing.
think it showed really through the whole
Yeah.
pandemic.
Exactly.
To the parent piece, the parents were incredibly supportive. I think they truly appreciate the work that the teachers and support staff do all day. And our teachers really stepped up in support staff. And, we talked about the food service staff last night. We
Yep.
had a school committee meeting and what the actions that they took during the pandemic. Everyone really gave their full potential and came together.
Yes, yeah, they did. And we've got a couple minutes left. Maybe you could just bring us up to date quickly about post-pandemic, if, I don't know, are we out of the pandemic yet?
Well-
It's confusing.
manage
Depends on what news channel you listen to, right?
Yeah, no, so, it was really quite a process since 2020, when we literally, shut the doors and moved to, that remote process. And then since then, when we came back in the following September, we were in a hybrid process. And that was really quite extraordinary because there was a lot of districts around here that were unable to manage
Yes.
or didn't even want to attempt.
Didn't try it.
Right, didn't even
exactly.
try, that the hybrid approach that we did. And again, our staff, our families, we couldn't have asked for better. We couldn't have asked for anything more, particularly from our staff in terms of, really trying to make this work as best as we can, on top of having all of the guidelines in place,
Yes.
right? So, we continued with that through last year, and coming into this year, we were returning full-time. We actually returned last spring, but continuing to use some of the guidelines, and those have been eased as the year has gone on. But we have kept some things in place because obviously people's safety and health are very important to us. And we are seeing a little uptick again, not just in Chelmsford, but across the state in COVID. So it is something that we're monitoring. But some of the things that we are still offering is the at-home tests. So kids can get them every 2 weeks because they have 2 tests in one kit. And also pool testing is available to families. And you can sign up at any time,
Correct.
if you want to become involved in that. We're still doing it. We're not sure what's going to happen for next year. This is a state-funded program. So, I think that we're still waiting to see, what is, going to be, the outcome of this year and what direction it is that we'll go in for next year.
Well, as somebody, again, I had a little bit of insight into the process because of my grandchildren having to go through this. I was amazed at how smoothly it went, how well it went, and also watching what was going on in some of the other districts where they couldn't even have the conversation. And the cooperation that you folks received from the staff was just, it was unbelievable.
It really was.
When you look at what was going on in some of the other communities. Bottom line is, folks, our school district, the people who manage it, the volunteer school folks, the school committee,
Families,
they're forward-thinking people, and they're thinking of the community, they're thinking of your kids, Chelmsford students, and I think we're in good hands. And I want to thank our two guests for appearing this evening, and we'll have you both back soon.
I would love it.
Thank you.